Have you ever sat in a room full of people, laughing along, nodding along, saying all the right things, and still felt like something inside you was completely disconnected from everyone around you? Like you were watching the moment instead of living inside it. Most people will never understand that feeling. But if you do, then stay with me until the very end, because today we are going to talk about 4 personality traits that only 1 in 100 people actually have. Not 1 in 10, not even 1 in 20. 1 in 100, statistically speaking. And when I say rare, I do not mean strange or broken. I mean that out of billions of people walking this earth, only a tiny fraction of them carry these 4 qualities together inside them. By the time this video ends, you are going to understand a part of yourself that you have probably never had the words for. The first trait is that you feel most alive when you are alone, but you are not antisocial. This is something most people get completely wrong. They assume that if someone enjoys solitude, it means they dislike people, or that something is wrong with them socially. But that is not what this is. A person with this rare trait can walk into a room, laugh at the right moments, hold a real conversation, and genuinely enjoy the company of others. But the second they get a stretch of time alone, something shifts. Their energy returns. Their mind clears. Silence does not feel empty to them. It feels like coming home. They do not need a screen playing in the background or a conversation filling every gap of quiet just to feel comfortable. They can sit with nothing but their own thoughts and feel completely at ease. This is genuinely rare because most people today have built their entire nervous system around distraction. The second there is a pause, a phone comes out. The second there is silence, music goes on. Being alone with their own mind makes most people uncomfortable, almost restless. But someone with this trait actually seeks that stillness out. It is where their best ideas form, where their emotions finally settle, and where they get honest with themselves in a way that almost never happens around other people. If you have ever canceled plans just to have a quiet evening to yourself and felt relieved instead of guilty, this is likely you. Think about the last time you had a completely empty evening with nothing scheduled and nobody expecting anything from you. If your first instinct was relief rather than boredom, that reaction alone puts you in a small minority. Most people treat an empty evening like a problem to be solved, something to fill immediately with plans, scrolling, or noise. But you treat it like a gift. That difference might seem small, but it says something significant about how your mind is built. It means your sense of peace does not depend on external stimulation. It comes from within, and that kind of internal stability is something a lot of people spend years in therapy trying to build. The second trait is that you feel emotions with incredible intensity, but you rarely let the world see it. This one confuses people because on the surface, you might look calm, steady, even a little unreadable, but underneath that surface is a completely different story. A piece of music can hit you somewhere you cannot even explain. A small act of kindness from a total stranger can stay in your mind for days. A memory from years ago can suddenly surface and hit you just as hard as the day it happened. You are not cold. You are not emotionless. You are actually one of the most emotionally sensitive people in any room you walk into. The difference is that you do not perform those emotions for an audience. You do not narrate your feelings out loud for validation or attention. You process everything quietly internally, and you are extremely selective about who earns the privilege of seeing that side of you. Psychologists who study emotional intelligence have consistently found that people who process their emotions internally before expressing them tend to make calmer decisions under pressure, maintain deeper and more stable relationships, and recover from setbacks faster than people who react instantly and visibly to every emotional trigger. So if you have spent your life being the person who feels everything but shows almost nothing, understand that this was never a weakness. It has always been a rare and quiet kind of strength that most people simply do not have the emotional discipline to hold. Now, before we move on to the third trait, I want you to do something. If everything you have heard so far feels like it is describing you a little too accurately, hit like on this video right now and drop a comment telling me which of these traits hit you the hardest so far. I read every single comment, and honestly, the people who make it this far into the video are almost always the same rare kind of person this content was made for. Your comment helps this video reach more people who need to hear it, so take 5 seconds and leave one before we continue. The third trait is that your mind works in a way that most people around you simply cannot follow. When other people look at a situation, they see the surface of it and move on. You do not. Your mind automatically digs deeper. You ask questions nobody else in the room is asking. You notice patterns, contradictions, and connections that everyone else walks right past without even registering. Because of this, small talk drains you almost instantly. You are not being rude when you disengage from surface-level conversation. You are simply wired to crave depth, and shallow conversation feels like static to you. You want to talk about things that actually matter, ideas that actually challenge you, questions that do not have easy answers. This can be isolating at times because you are constantly searching for depth in a world that has mostly settled for comfort and convenience. But here is the truth about this trait. Every meaningful breakthrough in science, art, philosophy, and human understanding throughout history has come from people who refused to accept the first, easiest answer and instead kept digging for the real one. If you have ever been called overthinking, intense, or too deep for casual conversation, that was never an insult. That was people describing a mind that operates on a different level than theirs. You have probably noticed that certain conversations leave you feeling energized while others leave you feeling completely drained, even if both lasted the exact same amount of time. That is not random. That is your mind telling you the difference between conversations that actually engage it and conversations that simply pass the time. People with this trait often find themselves gravitating toward books, documentaries, or late-night conversations that most people would consider too heavy or too intense for casual life. But for you, that intensity is not a burden. It is the only kind of engagement that actually feels satisfying. The fourth and final trait, and arguably the rarest of them all, is that you hold on to a personal set of values that you refuse to compromise, no matter how much pressure is put on you. This is the one that separates rare personalities from almost everyone else, because it is the hardest one to actually live by. When everyone around you is moving in one direction, agreeing with something just to keep the peace, or going along with a decision that quietly feels wrong to you, you are the one who pauses. You do not change who you are just to be liked, just to avoid an uncomfortable conversation, or just to fit smoothly into a group. You have an internal compass, quiet but unshakable, that tells you the difference between what is right and what is simply easier. And even when staying true to that compass costs you socially, even when it means standing alone in a room full of people who disagree with you, you choose your own integrity over their approval. This is the rarest trait of all four, because the entire world is built around pressure to conform. From childhood, we are taught to agree, to follow, to blend in, and most people spend their entire lives doing exactly that without ever questioning it. But a person with this trait has something inside them that cannot be talked out of its own convictions. They may bend under pressure sometimes. Everyone does. But they never lose their roots. They always find their way back to who they actually are. So here is what all of this really means. If you recognized even 2 or 3 of these traits in yourself, you are already standing in territory that very few people ever reach. If you recognized all 4, statistically speaking, you are part of a group so small that most people will go their entire lives without meeting more than a handful of others like them. And I want to be clear about something important. None of these traits mean you are better than anyone else. They simply mean you experience the world differently. You process it more deeply. You feel it more intensely. You protect it more carefully. And you refuse to let it flatten you into something easier for other people to categorize. That is not a flaw to fix. That is not something you need therapy to correct, or a personality you need to apologize for. It is something to understand, something to protect, and something to genuinely value, because the world quietly needs people who think deeply instead of reacting quickly, who feel honestly instead of performing emotions for approval, who live by their own values instead of borrowing everyone else's, and who are not afraid of silence when everyone else is desperately trying to escape it. If this video described you, or describes someone you know, that recognition matters more than you think. So many people go their whole lives feeling slightly out of step with everyone around them, without ever having the language to explain why. If today is the day that finally clicked for you, that is worth acknowledging. Comment your number below right now. Tell me exactly how many of these 4 traits actually apply to you. And be honest with yourself while you count, because I promise you, most people who watch this will only recognize 1, maybe 2. The ones who see themselves in all 4 are the exact reason this video exists. If this gave you even a small moment of clarity about yourself, do me a favor and like this video before you go, and send it to the one person you know who fits this description perfectly, because they probably need to hear it just as much as you did. New videos exploring the psychology of human behavior, personality, and relationships go up regularly right here on this channel, so make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on, because you do not want to miss the next one. I will see you in the next video.